Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, this is BurnCrowSP, and today we are back with my usual nerdy video game talk. But do you want to know what's not back today? The background. Yeah, my friend, you are fired, because we are going 16:9 today, and for a good reason. So, you see, there is this cool indie game about bunnies that I think you should know about. And I ain't gonna keep any of us waiting any longer. Enough with the chit chat, let's get that intro rolling. Alright, as always, allow me to start from the very beginning. codebunny was released on PC on September 22nd, 2023. Through the indie video game publisher platform itch.io. The game describes itself as a fast-paced 2D action platformer, using a pixel art look to portray a futuristic science fiction world. I also might add that the game has a content warning for cute bunnies, which is absolutely true, so yeah, be careful out there, people. Jokes aside, the game's description couldn't be more accurate. codebunny is absolutely accelerating, no matter which character you're playing as, and trying to maintain your speed while fighting enemies is what makes the game stand out. And yeah, you heard it right, I said both characters, though we'll get into that in a moment. Before going any further, I must mention that since the original release date, Team 7 Star has released a couple of updates to improve on different aspects of the game. Stuff like bug fixes and the addition of some extra features. And so, just to let you know, the dev team is planning on releasing even more content. Thus, keep in mind that at the time I'm reviewing this, version 1.1.4 is the latest update. However, even if my quick heads up was all about the gameplay, codebunny's personality really shines through its writing and story. And so, allow me to start my video with a rundown and discussion of the main plot for both campaigns. That way, you can just skip past this section in case you don't want any spoilers, because there will be spoilers all around. So yeah, as always, all the timestamps are integrated into the video and the description. So right now I'm just filling up some space so you guys have enough time to click on that blue number. Okay, ready or not, here we go. The very moment you press that start button, codebunny hops into action right away, with both members of the main cast attempting to stop the wreckage that's taking place at Lumna City. However, fighting the ones behind the ruckus leads both Axel and Hazel to run into a mysterious character, cloaked in a dark BY suit. The protagonists manage to defeat him without too many issues, and the damage dealt to his armor results in the suit breaking down, revealing his identity as Lune. Although before the conversation can develop any further, two more characters suddenly barge in, revealing themselves to be allies of Lune. They call themselves Mad Bunny, an organization akin to the BY space program, with their objectives being unknown by the heroes. Despite this, depending on which character you're playing as, the conversation reveals very different details about them. Lune seems to know many details about Axel Loop, despite them never meeting up until that point, and one of their members tries to explain how their involvement is some sort of misunderstanding. Being unable to pursue Mad Bunny, Axel and Hazel return to HQ, knowing that despite this mission being over, it only seems like it's just the beginning of a much bigger conflict. The game then takes a brief moment to do a small bit of world building. codebunny takes place in planet Lumna, year 2090. This world, inhabited by anthropomorphic bunnies, relies on Ether as the power source for all of their modern technology, with Comet Iliaster, a space body that orbits around the planet, being its birthplace. Thus, Ether provides seemingly unlimited energy, while also being a very versatile source. A combination of characteristics that allowed society and technology to flourish. In the present, the government of Xanadu, as well as the technological conglomerate Lagos Hyperbolics, have given birth to the BY space program, an organization with the objective of studying and harnessing the true potential of Comet Iliaster. We are then introduced to the members of the crew, these being the responsible yet hot-headed engineer Raffi, the snarky but brilliant head honcho of the team Igusa Yatsuki, and the two wielders of the high-tech ether suits, ex-skater BY Unit 01 Axel Loop, and the new face of the team, Xanadu Army Soldier BY Unit 02 Hazel Jones. Since Mad Bunny has been targeting Xanadu control areas, the CEO of Lagos Hyperbolics has instructed the team to stop them before they can cause any more harm. And so, it's up to Axel and Hazel to get out there and put an end to this conflict. From this point onward, the plot splits between the two characters, since even if the duo shares various scenes together, they have a very different story arc throughout the adventure, leading to a very different resolution. So let me tell you about our main characters first, okay? Contrary to Hazel, who just joined in, Axel has been on the team for a while now. From the get-go, he's a very open and approachable character. He dislikes fighting, and he can be quite naive and insecure at times, but that goes to show that he just means well, and wants to see the good in everyone, be it ally or foe. Hazel, on the other hand, is much less talkative. Her brash, direct approach to both fighting and social relationships may paint her as a very reserved character. However, there's much more to her than just that. Both of the BY unit's personalities really show while confronting the different members of Mad Bunny. The first one being the supposed witch who is hiding inside the vast boots of the forest of Morag. That person reveals herself as Faye of the Nyx clan, a name that definitely rings a bell on Hazel's mind. And her purpose is to stop invaders from entering the forest. Even after being tricked by her, Axel and Hazel are able to pursue the sorcerer into the deeper woods. There, Faye reveals that she's only fighting to save her homeland from Lagos Hyperbolics, and that there is more to Lumna City's incident. However, as soon as Axel or Hazel manages to defeat Faye, she drops a shard from Iliaster Comet, and she's taken to HQ for further questioning about it. Next up is Shoko Hikari, who resides in the gorgeous, airborne city of Chokaido, and this is where things get really interesting. Depending on who you're playing as, the conversation will be very different. When playing as Axel, Shoko speaks about she has adapted her mastery with kites for fighting, drawing a very interesting parallelism between both characters. She also seems to have a connection with Hazel, trying to convince Axel that he shouldn't side with her, as she will end up betraying him sooner or later. But when facing her as Hazel, she reacts in a more violent manner, bringing up how she made a choice that day that changed both of their lives forever. Shoko, however, is defeated by the protagonists, with the Comet Shard being destroyed in the process. Axel and Hazel allow her to escape, but before she does, Shoko mentions how both Hazel and Mother must pay for their crimes. Right after this, even after being told not to do so, Axel tries to speak with his new companion. Hazel quickly asks him about the reason why he decided to defend her when fighting Shoko, to which he responds, "Well, I don't know much about you, but I don't think you're a bad person." After opening up to each other a little more, Axel reveals more details about his past. He was born in an awful neighborhood, which forced him to toughen up at a very young age so he could stand up and defend both him and his little brother Lucian. He is also the reason why he joined the BY space program. Turns out, Lucian started suffering from a terminal illness and had to be hospitalized. Axel, following his brother's love for outer space, decided to join Lagos Hyperbolics in order to gather up money to pay for his medical bills. Sadly, this also made it impossible for him to be around his brother as often as he'd want to, and even after all of his efforts, Lucian couldn't beat his illness and passed away. Knowing this, Hazel reassures Axel, telling him that if he's not going to back down from the conflict, he should try to fight for something that he cherishes. And also, she mentions how she's been through a very similar situation in the past. Now, when playing the other side of the conversation, Hazel speaks about a man named Ash, who used to be his colleague back at the military, as well as the original owner of the Blood Rose, the sword she carries nowadays. However, after the day he died, both she and Shoko have never been the same, and the pain of her loss hasn't faded since. Ash also happened to be Shoko's lover, which explains the resentment that the head of Mud Bunny feels for our protagonist. Even though sharing a coffee with her new partner allowed him to lift the weight placed on his shoulders for a bit, Axel though is still struggling to grasp the meaning behind Shoko's way of acting and the purpose of her actions. Raffi is quick to try and help him, saying that she's just taking advantage of the other members, like Lune, due to their vulnerable position. Axel can't help but feel upset at this, since his enemies might not be evil per se, just misguided people. The discussion is cut short, however, because Lune, the last member of the opposition, has been spotted in the underpass. Axel is quick to locate him and decides to shut down his communication system in order to face him alone. He then tries to talk things out instead of fighting him. However, Lune scolds him for remaining attached to Lucien, as well as his past. Despite this, Axel won't back down. Meanwhile, Hazel remains at Lagos HQ along with Igusa. Shoko's words have also been able to create doubts inside the sword-wielding bunny, which prompts her to open up to Igusa about it. They both discuss the purpose of the BY space program and the involvement of the CEO with it, leading Igusa to mention the existence of a very strange module that the boss has been visiting from time to time. A hidden area of Lagos Hyperbolics HQ that cannot be reached through normal routes. Hazel then decides to go and check out the insides of the mysterious module, and inside, she finds something disturbing. She finds herself, or rather a clone of her. But not just one, there's hundreds of them. After digging inside the log's recordings, the sword-wielding bunny discovers the truth. Soleil, the CEO of Lagos Hyperbolics, has been creating clones of Hazel in order to get funding from the military. Not only that, but the reason behind marking Mud Bunny as a target was to capture Lune, since he's vital to her dream in some way. Before she can return back to Igusa, she is attacked by a massive amount of clones, and despite managing to survive the fight, Hazel falls unconscious, unable to make an escape. On the other side, the fight between Axel and Lune is quickly resolved. As a matter of fact, the usage of either energy makes Lune's corruption go away, revealing his real face. And to our protagonist's shock, he is exactly like Lucien. Before he can let it sink in, Lune is struck by someone else's attack, which turns out to be none other than Raffi. She then reveals the importance of Lune for the BY space program and offers him the chance to remain with the team even after knowing that their goals are not as simple as he thought. Axel decides to part ways. However, he won't stay still. The game then cuts out to a flashback of the very first day in which our main character arrived at the HQ, showcasing the motives behind Raffi's involvement on the project. Her words back then now resonate within Axel. Fight for what you believe in. With his newfound resolution, the skater bunny heads for Wonderland, where he will have to make a very important decision. In the meanwhile, and after her incident back at Lagos HQ, Hazel awakens in an abandoned place, along with the company of Shoko and Phoenix. Turns out Mud Bunny was only trying to protect Lune from Soleil, and the incident back at Lumina City took place after he lost control over his corruption. Determined to put a stop to Soleil's plans, Shoko and Hazel head straight to Wonderland, the place that holds within itself the Stardust Clock Tower, Planet Lumina's biggest reserve of ether energy. At the top of the clock tower, Axel meets again with Raffi. However, she won't be going down without a fight. Despite being defeated though, the engineer reveals that while they were fighting, Igusa, Lune and Soleil, the CEO of Lagos Hyperbolics, should be on their way to Comet Iliaster's core, as well as confessing that Lune and the clock tower were the key to open a portal to it. All of that so they can fulfill their dream. Before Axel gets to understand all of this happens. Now inside this bizarre dimension, Axel gets to relive many of the moments that he shared along with his brother Lucien, as well as what happened while he was working at the BY space program. This comes with a big revelation. Lucien survived thanks to the intervention of none other than Soleil Lumiere. Against all odds, she stopped his condition because he had something that she needed. Losing his memories along the way, he was given a BY suit and a new identity as Lune, as well as a way to combat the pain of his condition, this being the usage of comet shards. Shocked after learning about all of this, Axel keeps pushing forward. His path crosses with Raffi's once more, however, this time things are different. Our protagonist decides not to fight. With things now cleared up between the engineer and our protagonist on this side of the plot, Axel gathers up his courage one last time and heads into the core of Comet Iliaster to put an end to Soleil's plans. Now, if we rewind back a little bit, Hazel's version of the scene shows a very important part of the story. She is about to relive the events of the day that changed her life forever. The day in which Ash died. It goes back to the time in which both of them were colleagues at the military. One day, during a mission of what seems to be the forest of Morag, Ash and Hazel encounter a bunch of rogue villagers. However, they are quickly taken down by the original owner of the Blood Rose. Ash then confesses that he's thinking about quitting, so he can have a normal life along with Shoko, a reveal that catches Hazel very off guard. Before they can discuss it further, Ash is quickly called back to camp, leaving Hazel behind so she can keep an eye on the prisoners. As soon as he arrives, however, Ash is contacted by Soleil, telling him that his mission has changed, being tasked to hunt down the civilians of the forest, in order to capture them and use them as guinea pigs for multiple experiments at Lagos Hyperbolics. Angered by this, Ash refuses to go along with her plans and goes rogue. By the time Hazel arrives, Ash's mind is gone, and the soldiers' attacks don't seem to hurt him. That is, until the blood rose is knocked from his hands, falling at Hazel's feet. She then grabs the sword and puts an end to her friend's life. What follows is a heart-wrenching scene in which Hazel and Shoko break down in tears after re-experiencing those events, which then leads to a violent reaction from the latter, triggering a fight between both of them. Hazel, however, comes out on top, and this is what follows. Finally clenching her sword with a newfound resolve, Hazel progresses deeper into the core in search of Soleil. Before that though, both heroes run into Igusa one last time. She apologizes to them and offers some insight into what Soleil has been doing all along. Turns out, Ether is not only a power source, it's the essence of every single life form in this world. After learning this, Soleil thought that, by rewriting someone's essence, their code, she could try to create a living clone of his deceased loved one, Méliès, who succumbed to the same illness that took Lucien's life. She failed, however, because no matter how much she tried, memories will not carry over, just like what happened to Lune. On Hazel's side, Igusa reveals that she wanted to try and stop Soleil before this happened, but she never could gather up the courage to do so. Before parting ways one last time, Igusa asks her about why she's fighting for, to which Hazel replies that she finally got a grip over her life once more. She found her truth. With this knowledge, Axel and Hazel confront Soleil. She reveals that reality in this world is not as it seems, since they all exist inside someone else's mind. Thus, every single entity that inhabits this realm is, in her views, just a dream. Knowing the truth isn't enough to tear through the determination of our heroes, resulting in her defeat. Now, depending on which character you've chosen, you'll get a different ending, and also a different resolution. Even after learning about the truth of this world, Axel decides that he's the hero of his own story, and even if the true nature of his existence might say otherwise, he can harness his memories up until that point as real. The world may be a dream, an illusion, but he is the one who will decide over his life, and that's what really matters in the end. That's what makes him feel real. It's not just blissful ignorance, but acceptance. He, along with Lune, will work towards a bright future, in order to finally move on from his past. On Hazel's side, even if she is not real per se, even if she's nothing but a product of someone else's imagination, the things she feels are real. The blood rose she carries in her hands is the proof of that, and she will carry on with Ash's will, as well as her newfound reason to live. And that's it for the plot. So what do I think about it, you might ask? Well, let me get into that. When games try to add this multiple playthroughs type of storytelling into a video game, there is an issue that needs to be kept in mind, which is repetition. You'll often find games showing you the very same cutscene from a different point of view that barely adds nothing to the whole picture. codebunny, however, differs from this. Even the most minor of all the cutscenes has some sort of difference between both campaigns, and it works really well thanks to how different the main characters are, as well as how they fit into the bigger picture. For example, when playing as Axel, this interaction between both protagonists might lead you to think that Hazel is ignoring him, but when playing as her, you get to see what she's truly thinking, and that applies to all main story cutscenes, as well as how each character reacts to the presence of the protagonist of your choosing. It is true that it ain't perfect, since if you play as Axel first, as I did, Soleil doesn't appear until the very end of the game and some details are kept very vague. But I feel like it's designed this way, to try and push players to experience the other point of view of the event. Now, on the topic of writing, I must say that I am very impressed. Since you can beat both campaigns in just about 3 hours on a blind run, you get very little time to know the full cast. Despite this, codebunny's characters feel alive. The BY space program crew feels like a big family, and the interactions between members gave me some high quality banter. The kind of conversations that I would expect from a bunch of colleagues that have been working together for years. And mind you, this is all optional. Aside from the main cutscenes that you can disable on the main menu, by the way, all of the dialogue happens in between missions on the talk room. You get 3 different conversations per campaign after each mission before heading into either Underpass or Lagos HQ, and here's where players will get to experience a bit more of each character's personality. Conversations here are worth checking out, since not only you'll get some snarky banter, but it also holds the key to some insight about the main cast, as well as bits of world building and explanations of what's going on with the plot at that given moment. And honestly, I love this decision. If you are here just for the gameplay, that's fine, you can just keep going and no one will blame you. However, if you're willing to invest yourself in the characters, and learn more about them, the game gives you the option to do so at your own leisure. Doing so is very recommended though, in my opinion, because that way the main story cutscenes will hit even harder. You know, being betrayed by Raffi will make a bigger impact on the players who went out of their way to talk to her and get to see her full personality. I honestly think that the main cast is very likable, and it shows how much effort was put into characterization and writing, despite not being the game's main focus. What is the main focus then? Oh boy, let's talk about the gameplay. Just like I told you during the video's intro, codebunny is a very fast-paced 2D action platformer. But just like the story, each playthrough feels very unique. You'll be dashing, jumping, and defeating enemies along your way to the end of each section, where a boss will be waiting for your character of choice. How you make it through is what truly is important. On one hand, Axel's main way of attacking enemies is dashing into them while spinning. Doing so will launch him back though, so players will need to maintain control of his spinning motion in order to properly fight any opponent. However, there is more to it. You can use the recoil of bashing into an enemy to attack someone else, and then bounce back to hit the first one again. And once you understand that, you'll feel like you opened Pandora's box. This move is not alone in the pool though, because Axel can also stomp on enemies to bounce off them and reach higher terrain. Performing any of these actions correctly will fill up the EX gauge, and once that's filled up, Comet Arts become available. These come in the form of a directional air dash, an upgraded stomp, and an improved spinning motion. However, players will need to be careful, since getting hit by anything will consume this gauge, negating the damage but cutting off your flow until the player manages to build back some meter. On the other hand, we have Hazel Jones. The usage of the Blood Rose Katana allows her to use the power of Karma to her advantage. By using the triggers, players can shoot arrows that will stick to enemies for a short period of time. Once that target is set, Hazel can then quickly close the gap and slash her foe. Since you can lock into multiple enemies before unsheathing your sword, it's up to the player to make quick decisions in order to maintain the flow of combat. If the combo meter breaks, the karma meter will fill up, which increases the damage output of the Blood Rose in exchange for also increasing the vulnerability of her wielder. To counter this, Hazel has a few tricks up her sleeve. On one side there's the parry, which allows her to stop an enemy's attack to swiftly respond with a sword slash, and on the other side there's the existence of Shatter Point, which will allow Hazel to survive a lethal hit in just one occasion before kicking the bucket. With such an intricately designed duo of main characters, level design needs to be pretty good in order to allow players to use their full arsenal without running into unforeseen consequences, or breaking the balance in half. So, did the developers do their homework? You can bet your derriere they did. Just like how each character has their own story and gameplay features, despite sharing 5 out of the 6 main levels, Axel and Hazel's side of each area is vastly different, especially when it comes to enemy placements. The dev team accommodated the positions of every single opponent in order to perfectly suit each of the bunny's capabilities, and so even if the setting is familiar and some set pieces are the same, stages can be very different from each other depending on who you are playing as. The exception to the rule here is the 4th level, which is completely different depending on who you play as. Axel gets the underpass and Hazel goes to Lagos Hyperbolic's HQ. These 2 stages are easily on my top 3 of the entire game, because they showcase the skills of both protagonists at their full potential, all while allowing players to go through the stage and flow at dazzling speeds. And what's that flow thing about, you ask? Okay, allow me to elaborate on it. As I told you, codebunny's gameplay is all about being able to maintain a considerable amount of speed until the level is over. When that happens, players will receive a rank depending on their performance throughout that specific level. The same happens after every boss fight. Thus, levels will try to push the players into replaying them in order to improve on their score. However, in order to make this as fun as possible, the intricate enemy placements I talked about a few moments ago must be backed up by a degree of finesse when it comes to laying out each level. Luckily, Team 7 Star does not falter in that aspect either. Most stages in this game are very open in nature, with multiple routes spreading vertically across every section. And so, in order to achieve those high ranks, finding the most optimal route will be required. Makes sense, right? The fastest route, though, will always be the most difficult, requiring the one behind the screen to up their gaming skills in order to not fall off the path. But then what happens if you fail? Well, if you screw up and, for example, fall off the path, codebunny doesn't punish players like how you would expect. I remember during my first run, I fell into a pit during the intro stage, expecting the game to just respawn me back to the last checkpoint, but to my surprise, I was just sent to a different path and was able to continue on the spot. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what I mean by flow. When playing like an absolute professional, the game is accelerating, but during those moments where a player makes a mistake, codebunny keeps it going by just allowing you to continue through a different path. Yes, that route might be slower, but you'll still have the chance to make up for it and shave off some seconds of your best time if you perform. And even in those cases where there is indeed a bottomless pit, or you manage to die by taking too much damage, your character of choice will just quickly respawn at the last checkpoint. The action never stops, and this is a blessing during blind runs. Still, on top of all of this, codebunny also manages to keep levels from becoming stale by offering multiple set pieces that differentiate stages between each other. The main adventure is composed of 6 different areas, bringing a wide variety of set pieces into the equation. Things like the wind currents of Yokkaido, the grindable rails of Underpass, or the vertically looping insides of the comet's core. They all offer something different that complement the basis of the gameplay in some sort of way. Although, wanna know what else complements the gameplay? The controls, of course. Being able to maneuver the character that's on the screen with enough precision is an absolute must for a platformer. Thankfully, even if watching someone going absolutely bonkers at the game may look a bit complicated, the control scheme is surprisingly simple. You jump and attack with the face buttons, and then each character's unique actions are mapped to the bumpers. When it comes to the actual feel of the gameplay, Hazel and Axel behave a bit differently. They both carry some momentum, but since Axel is on rollerblades, his spinning move has some weight to it, while Hazel feels just snappier. Despite these traits, the controls feel on point, even when making precise jumps, which goes to show that the dev team took their time to hone and adjust everything as much as they could. With such a simple control scheme and a manageable physics engine, any player should be able to understand how to play codebunny. Even when playing on keyboard. Yeah, I tried to use both control schemes and they both worked fine, so yeah, that's cool. Although, despite the control scheme being very easy to understand and put to use, you would be surprised how insanely high the skill ceiling is. As you build up your confidence, you'll soon be bouncing back and forth between enemies, dashing at high speeds, and keeping that karma meter going without breaking a sweat. Like, take a look at this. This is what my first run through Underpass looked like. And this is just my second playthrough. While a blind run without cutscenes will probably take you around an hour and a half to complete, you can beat the entire game with any character in under 15 minutes. That not only means that investing yourself in improving your times has a payoff, it also goes to show how replayable the game can be. This focus on replayability and player improvement does come with a setback though, and it's the overall easy difficulty of the main adventure. By definition, codebunny is a game that extends its playability after the credits have rolled over. In my case, I had a lot of fun going back to try and master each stage, but I can also understand that not all players will share the same sentiments. Although you could argue that the easygoing nature of the main campaign will help casual audiences to enjoy the story and what the game has to offer. I guess every con has some pros. If you're a speedrunner though, you can rejoice, this game works wonders for speedrunning. Also, speaking about low difficulty, I think it's time to talk about the last aspect of the game that I have yet to mention, the boss fights. I left them for the very end because I feel like they might be the weakest aspect of the game. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they are bad. Each boss has a unique attack pattern, very recognizable designs, and they are pretty fun. Still, most of them are a tad too easy on the player, and so I feel like most opponents tend to go down before you even notice. With the exception of the character exclusive levels, these encounters are also the only point where one of the two main protagonists has a clear advantage over the other. Since Axel's either barrier will stop one hit from actually dealing damage to his armor, and considering how players can quickly regain the lost EH gauge by just keeping an offensive approach, I kinda felt like I was playing with a permanent safety net. That is, unless I ended up falling into the pit on those fights that have one. There are also some occasions in which I had bosses like Lune almost defeating themselves by running me into a wall. Though considering how well the rest of the game works, this didn't worsen my experience. Alright fellas, the time has arrived to tackle the last big chapter of the video, and in case you have already guessed it, or just looked at the timeline with all the sections, let's dive into the presentation. As you may have noticed by now, the art direction chosen by those behind codebunny is all about smoothly animated sprites, be it characters or backgrounds, creating a combination of old and modern that fits the futuristic themes of the game. You'd think that this approach will limit the range of emotions that the characters can show, due to them being pretty small, which is accentuated by the chibi style of the sprites. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. Each character has been animated with a lot of care, and their personalities ooze from just a glance. Want an example? Look at Igusa during the talkroom sessions. Just look at her go. Businessmen, you have to take notes, this is how you run a company. During gameplay though, considering the crazy speeds that the main characters of codebunny can reach, I appreciate that the characters' animations are snappy and very easy to tell apart from everything else. Same goes for the enemies, considering how quickly you can dispatch them, they still have a very carefully designed pattern and clear tells of when to attack or dodge their counter moves. And now that we are talking about personality, one thing about the game that definitely surprised me in a good way is how it does not hesitate to incorporate elements of the narrative into its presentation. The boss at the start of Axel's version of Stage 6 is probably one of the best examples. Before the fight, he will have this inner monologue saying that he does not want to engage in combat with this enemy. Mind you, every time we see the character's thoughts, it's colored in blue. That happens across the whole game. Killing this enemy or losing the battle will result in the encounter looping over and over. And in case you lose the battle yourself, the same will happen. Then what is the solution, you might ask? Well, you need to open the menu. Oh, would you look at that? I was so surprised when I saw this. Actually, I felt the despair of the character while playing, like, you are trapped in this situation, what will you do if you don't want to fight? I was about to, stop playing for a while, just take a shower, have dinner, come back, and then maybe I'll discover what I have to do by myself. And as soon as I paused, it clicked on me. I was like, oh boy, this is how it's done. And that is so clever. Oh, want another example? Okay, on stage 2, both characters will be tricked by Phoenix into falling through a fake floor. The thing is, this is not a cutscene, you have to do this yourself. And the first time it happened to me, I fell for it. Wanna know why? I was so immersed into the character, this being Axel, that I actually approaching Faye to try and talk things out felt like the right thing to do. Was it naive? Yes, of course, and Igusa will be quick to remark that for you. But was it a very in-character moment? Holy cow, it definitely was. Also, shoutouts to the fake checkpoint boss. This thing made me jump off my seat. I had not been bamboozled this hard since I ran into the fake bird door thing from Super Mario Bros. 2. In fact, now that I bring up the checkpoint boss, I have to say, I love how the Comet Core, as well as the dreamlike sequences, abandon the pixel art style, using flat textures and abstract backgrounds instead. After getting accustomed to the visual identity that the rest of the adventure is known for, this felt very uncanny, so kudos for that because I'm sure that was the intention. Not everything is perfect though, since, for example, there are minor problems here and there when it comes to graphics. The way the text jumps and cuts from line to line being the one that grabbed my attention the most. Though considering how the devs will keep updating the game, maybe once you get to play it this won't be a thing anymore. Oh, and if you're worried about performance, worry not, codebunny has all the options you need. It also runs at a butter smooth 60 frames per second, and I was unable to get the game to lag at all. Even while recording footage on my low-end laptop, the game stood his ground like a champ, so that's the proof of some nice coding. Okay, I have delayed this long enough, let's talk about the sound. This is the part of the video where I will be fully subjective, since music tastes will change depending on who you ask. For me though, codebunny's soundtrack is absolutely great. It knows when to be upbeat, it knows when to be moody, and it also knows when to slam you in the face with melancholic tracks when the narrative requires it. Oh, and then there are just downright bangers like Wonderland theme, Wondrous Luster. All with a chiptune touch that makes my inner retro game nerd go crazy. In fact, the entire soundtrack, courtesy of both Labiasor and Alumae, was composed using FamiTracker, which means that it remains within the limitations of the NES. They say that limitations bring the best out of every single composer, and codebunny can actually be an example of that. Aside from the music, the sound effects feel very crunchy and they fit like a glove with the game's aesthetic. I also never encountered any noticeable balancing issues, and the game lets you play around with the audio settings in case something doesn't suit your preferences. So even if with its minor issues, codebunny is a delight to both eyes and ears from the title screen to the end credits. Oh, and about the credits, wanna know what really surprised me as soon as I finished the adventure? This game was made by a team of 8 people, just 8 passionate individuals who clearly tried their best when working on the game, and considering the insane amount of polish that the main mechanics have, I can't help but be impressed at their feat. And that feeling was amplified as soon as I got to know the story behind the development of codebunny. It turns out when Lavi began working on the project back in 2020, it was meant to be some sort of hybrid of a shoot 'em up and a platformer. In fact, there was a tech demo of the engine featuring Mega Man Zero characters that later became the basis for this game. As soon as the combo system as well as the fast-paced gameplay became the main components of the gameplay, codebunny's identity was born, and if you take a glance at the team's presence over Twitter, you will surely find snippets of how the game transformed, slowly but surely, into the final version we know today. These logs, by the way, reveal a very interesting story. When codebunny released, Team 7 Star received some criticism from users claiming that Hazel's gameplay mechanics were ripped straight from Azur's Tracker Gumball 3, which saw its release 1 year prior to this game. Interestingly, it was the other way around. Hazel as a character was shown first in 2021, way before the very first trailer for Gumball 3. And I don't know if you'll share the same thoughts, but ladies and gentlemen, we may have witnessed one of the biggest coincidences in gaming history. A case where an indie development team, inspired by some ideas from other games including Gumball, was able to come up with the same gameplay loop as the guys at Inti Creates without any sort of interaction whatsoever between them. The last page in this story is yet to be written though, since some extra content like speedrun mode is already in the works. With that and the upcoming release of codebunny on Steam, you can be sure that Team 7 Star ain't done just yet. But that is up to the future to determine. Let's stay in the present and wrap this video up, shall we? codebunny is much more than just an indie Gumball game. It is a title that oozes with personality through every single one of its elements. While being a short, easy experience on the surface, it holds within itself two very distinct gameplay styles that are both a blast to play around with. Now, combine that with a nice degree of polish, great visuals, and a stellar soundtrack, and what you get is a kick-ass package. There are a few flaws here and there, like some minor problems with the UI and difficulty balancing, but they aren't big enough to diminish the overall experience in any way. It's one of those games that the more you play it, the better you'll become at it, and then you'll be able to go for those coveted high scores. Characters and writing are also excellent aspects of Code Bunny, a very welcome surprise considering how the main focus of the game is on its gameplay, yet it presents a very impactful narrative. The main cast has enough personality to deserve a show of their own, and the split between the two characters' story is very well done. And despite spending so little time with these bunnies, they will grow on you before you even notice. So, is the game worth the $10 it costs? Absolutely. The price-quality ratio is off the charts on this one. So yeah, what are you waiting for? I'll leave a link to the itch.io page of the game down in the description, so you can check out all the details about it. Also, allow me to send out a massive shoutout to Violeta Bolnut, Labiasor, and the rest of the team behind Code Bunny. Not only for contacting me and sending me a review code, but also for being such wonderful, kind people to me. They resolved all of my doubts while scripting this, and they provided me with enough material to make the video you've just seen. And they were kind enough to drop by my stream when I was playing the game, so yeah, big kudos. These guys made my first actual review on my own a very pleasant experience. Their social media accounts will be down below too. And okay, I think we've reached the end. This is BurnCrowSP, and what you all have just seen is why Code Bunny deserves your time. Thanks for watching. Okay, so we are back with unscripted farewell messages. As always, thank you so much for making it through the video up until this point. If you enjoy what you have seen, then I will thank you a ton if you decide to subscribe and keep supporting the channel. I have been very thankful of all the support I've been received during the latest videos, so yeah, I couldn't be any happier. With nothing else to say, you should be seeing here some other stuff I've done, so yeah, make sure to try and check those out too. And I guess that's it. Make sure to take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!